Today I'm going to go through all of the gear that has gradually become essential in helping me be a long distance runner. I appreciate there's some irony here. I got into running because it was so minimal. All I needed was some trainers and then I could leave the house and I was free. But as I became a better runner, I started to run further and I've accumulated all this stuff. Now that is the lens to look at this through though. I've accumulated it over time and I'm trying to run a really long way in my races. So in that scenario, the right kit is essential. Today I'm going to go through the tech that I use, the clothing that I wear, and then some of the things that I use specifically in ultra distance races, and I hope it helps. Starting with tech, I'm going to start with the Curveball, which is actually my coffee machine. I've got a busy life, I've got kids, and I often find myself in my training blocks setting my alarm for 4:30 or 5 in the morning to get a run in before the family wakes up. So my coffee machine is programmable to come on at a certain time. That's like a second alarm clock for me. My alarm goes off and I know there's coffee waiting for me downstairs, and that gets me out of bed, grab a coffee, and then I can go on my run. And that's one of the things that actually helps me fit my training into a busy week. Wouldn't think about it, but it's a game changer. Moving on to my watch, and this is the Garmin Fenix 7X Solar. I used to have the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro, which is a smaller watch, smaller battery. I really had no need to upgrade. I loved that watch until I ran 100 miles around a running track, and as I pressed stop for the event, it ran out of battery. I really hoped it saved. It did save, but that taught me that I need a better battery for some of the races I'm doing now, and that's why I upgraded to the 7X Solar. I chose the Fenix range because it's a great all-rounder. Although I'm primarily a runner, sometimes I play golf, sometimes I go skiing or go swimming. This just does everything really well. This is my daily driver and I love it. Moving on to headphones. Now, Shokz have reached out to me to sponsor this video, but I've been using Shokz for years, so when they reached out, it was an absolute no-brainer to work with them. These are the Shokz Open Run Pro 2s. They sent them to me for free, and I have more information about them down in the description. I first started wearing Shokz years ago because I don't feel like it's healthy to sweat with earbuds in my ears when I'm running. And also I do like to hear my surroundings. I feel like it's safer, and I like to hear nature, the breeze in the trees, the birds singing. So I find that the open headphones are the best of both worlds. You get to hear the nature and the music. And then lastly, you get to wear them in your races as well, whereas normally earbuds are banned. I started with one of the very original pairs of Shokz, and then about a year ago I upgraded to the Open Run Pros. But what I've been enjoying about the Open Run Pro 2 is that firstly, they're more comfortable. I never found the Open Run Pros uncomfortable, but these don't bounce at all and they don't squeeze the temples quite so hard. These are the most comfortable ones I've tried. They're USB-C chargeable, which means that all of my tech, apart from my Garmin, is now USB-C charged, so that's becoming really handy. And most importantly, with the Open Run Pro 2s, the clarity of sound is definitely upgraded. I noticed that in two scenarios. First of all, with podcasts and audiobooks. I actually wouldn't listen to a podcast with the Open Run Pros if there was too much ambient noise around me, like traffic. Whereas the Open Run Pro 2s, I find I can pick out the voices much more clearly, and then that means I can listen to podcasts even if there's ambient noise around me. And then with music, when I'm running, I like to listen to ambient electro. I like to feel like I'm running on another planet, so I listen to people like Max Cooper, Nils Fram, Kiasmos. And with the Open Run Pro 2s, I can pick out the layers and textures in the music a bit more than I could with the Open Run Pros. These really are the best I've tried, so if you're interested in some bone conduction headphones, you can check out the link in the description. Moving on to clothing, we'll start with shoes. What you need to understand before we get onto my running trainers is when I'm not running, about 95% of the time I'm wearing Vivo Barefoots. I really value having a wide toe box and a flexible shoe that allows my foot to work and strengthens my foot. And for a while I did try to run in minimal shoes like this, but it just didn't work for me. I didn't find running as enjoyable as having a little bit of cushion. So because I really value the wide toe box, I run in Altra. I've got a few pairs of Altra, a couple of road, a couple of trail shoes. These are the Altra Lone Peaks, which I do most of my training in, and these are the most comfortable shoe I own, I'm sure of it. But what I find is when I get to about 20 miles in these, my feet start to ache a little bit because they're a little bit thinner. So I do my ultra marathon racing in the Altra Olympus. This is their highest stack shoe, gives me cushion and helps protect against rocks and things in the long distance on the feet. I have tried the Altra Mont Blanc, but they're much more trimmed down. They're That's supposed to be a good race shoe, but I didn't find the reduction in weight was worth the reduction in comfort, so I use the Altra Olympus to race in. Going into my shoes, I wear Injinji toe socks to race in. I also love stance socks and wearing funky colors when I'm training in the gym and shorter distance runs. But when I go long distance, the combination of a toe sock with a wide toe box, I have never had a blister at all in any of my races. Don't want to jinx it, but this combo seems to really work for me. With shorts, it takes a long time to find the perfect short. What I've landed on is the Salomon with a 7-inch inseam. And what I'm thinking about when choosing the perfect short is, first of all, what can I carry? So the Salomon has a pocket that's plenty big enough for a phone, and then it's got pockets around the edge which I can put nutrition in and any rubbish. A little habit I have when I'm ultra running is that I'll put my snacks in these pockets, eat them, and then put the rubbish back in these pockets. And then when I get to an aid station, rubbish out, next a lot of snacks in to get me to the next aid station. And then 7-inch inseam means that my thighs have never chafed. If I wear shorter shorts, which I love to train in, and I feel very free in them, eventually my thighs chafe. So this combination of longer inseam with the pockets around the edge is a really good combo for me. I don't need to talk too much about t-shirts, but when you run a really long way, you want to trust your t-shirt. So my favorite is the Lululemon Metal Vent Tech. Never had a chafe, feel really comfortable all around my sides and under my arms, and this is quite nice. Moving on to the mid layer, I have a few mid layers, but I pretty much never pick anything up other than the Salomon Light Hoodie. This is great for spring and autumn, but even in the deepest of winter here in the UK, if I just put a waterproof or windproof over the top of this, I've never needed anything thicker than this. So I pick this up all the time. It's got a chest pocket if I need it. It's got this ripple pattern on the inside, which seems to be quite breathable. It's super comfortable, and this is the one I always pick up. For the outer layer, I want to talk about the difference between a windproof and a waterproof. Obviously, a waterproof is waterproof, but two things, it's not completely waterproof, so water will find its way through eventually, and it's hotter. Whereas a windproof, although it's not waterproof, it does stop the wind from cooling you down when you're wet, so it keeps you warm when you're wet, and it's lighter, and it's a bit cooler. Plus, look how small it packs down into. This is so light, it packs down so tiny, you can keep it in your pocket really easily, pack it back down if you need to. I find myself picking this up more than the waterproof. Having said that, this waterproof is the Salomon Bonatti Trail, and it has a pleat down the back, which means that it can splay out. I keep it in my race vest, which I'm going to get to in a minute, and when the rain starts, I can pull it out and actually put it over my race vest without having to take that off, and that is super handy. Although I find myself going for the windproof more just in training, this waterproof has never failed me, and I do love it. Just quickly with gloves, I'm not going to go too into it. I have a light glove that I wear 90% of the time. It's good in almost all conditions. When I need a warmer glove, I've got the Montane Prism, which are amazing. They are so warm, but very lightweight, and they pack down into this tiny bag. Neither of these gloves are waterproof though, so when I need waterproof gloves, I put this OM waterproof mitten over the top. I tried some other mittens, I think they were Salomon, but they were shorter, which meant that when I tucked them in the sleeve of my windproof or my waterproof, they kept popping out, so then water would get in. These are a longer mitten, so that never happens, and then that keeps my hands and wrists dry. For extra warmth, I use buffs, but I also use buffs in the summer just by wrapping them around my wrist, and they're a good sweatband or snot rag if you need it. I've got a few of these which you end up collecting from races and things, but I've also got a warmer version from Innovate. Now, since I've had this, I have never worn a hat in the winter because this is so warm, and I start off with it around my head, but then inevitably get warmer, so I tuck it down onto my neck, and then if I get warmer from there, I just wrap it around my wrist. It's far more versatile than a hat, so since having this, I've never worn a hat, and it's good to have a collection of these things. Summer hats, I've got a Salomon Light cap, and this is great to chuck into a race vest. I also wear this when it's raining to stop the rain going in my eyes, but when it's really hot and I'm covering a long distance, I wear this silly North Face sun hat. Maybe it looks ridiculous, but I did try the Legionnaires caps, and I found two things. Firstly, when you really need a sun hat to protect your neck, it's when the sun is at its peak coming down from the middle of the day. So this does protect your neck. Second of all, the Legionnaires hat just kept the heat in around my neck, so I felt very oppressed and claustrophobic in it. Whereas this, you feel the breeze and it's cooler. So I prefer this when I'm running a really long way on really hot days. And for my sunglasses, I've got the Gooder sunglasses. What's not to like? They're funky, they look good, funky colors, they're polarized, and they're £30. Really can't go wrong with these. They're everything you could possibly need. Moving on to some of the ultra distance stuff that I use, but I also use this in training. This is the Salomon 12 litre race vest. I used to have the Salomon 5 litre as well, but I had that in red and I found that I preferred black. So in training, if I was just taking this out with a couple of bottles of water and nothing in the back, I never worried that it was the bigger vest, even though it was empty. I just always picked up the 12 litre, and it's so light, I never found myself needing the smaller vest, so I sold it. This is the only one I've got. I use it for everything and it's amazing. My last ultra was a 100k mountain ultra and it had a very long mandatory kit list. This fit things in easily. One of the things that helped me fit things in easily is to have a few of these waterproof baggies. What you can do is you can put all your clothes in and then squeeze all the air out and then pack them down into a tighter space. Plus it keeps all of your spare kit dry if it's been raining or you're sweating because you don't want to put on a wet t-shirt later in the day. So I definitely recommend having a few of these. I've got 3 of them that I can pack into this. And then also for carrying kit, I have a race belt from Compressed Sport. Sometimes I go out just running with this. It's amazing how much stuff you can pack in this, but it's also got some loops on the back to carry your poles. I do have the Salomon Race Quiver to carry poles. It's fine to carry your poles, it's perfectly comfortable, fine to take them out. I have not got the knack of putting my poles back in when I'm running though. I just cannot get the things in. Whereas with the Compressed Sport race belt, it's really easy to put the poles back in. So when you're going downhill and you have to put your poles away, or if you have to scramble, I prefer to have this race belt. Obviously the race pack can hold your water bottles. One thing to say about water bottles is, I think they've stopped doing these now, but when I got my race pack, it came with these bottles with the hard bottom. Don't ever get those. Yeah, always get the one with the soft bottom. This hard bottom here would rub just below my pec and I'd end up with blisters each side because of that hard bottom. So don't ever get those. When you run a really long way, or if you're just training in the winter, eventually you're gonna need a head torch. And obviously the number one thing you need to think about with a head torch is the light. So I've got this silver, the light is fantastic. I normally only ever use it on the lowest or the middle setting, and that's plenty good enough and it makes the battery last longer. The other thing I think about is how easy it is to change battery sources. Most of the time, I will use this big battery block because it's got a long lead and I can put that in my race vest. But I've also got backup AAA batteries on the back of the head torch, and it's really easy to switch from one to the other. If you think about it, the time that you're going to need to switch over batteries is probably late into the night. Your hands might be swollen because you've been running for such a long time. They might be really cold. You don't want to be fiddling around with anything tricky. So to go from one battery pack to the other just by switching this over really easily, that's super handy. In the mountains, I like to use poles. They're really good for helping to bring the power of your upper body into your forward movement. I've got the Salomon ones. I wouldn't actually recommend them. What I've found is no matter how tight I tighten this thing on the top, eventually the handles just slip longer and longer. If I was starting again, I've heard really good things about the Black Diamond ones, and I would probably go with the Lecky where you get the hand strap because that is even better at transferring force from your upper body into your forward movement. But these aren't quite bad enough for me to sell them and get new ones, so I'm using these until they break. And then onto nutrition. When I'm running a long way, real food is a big part of my nutrition plan, but when it comes to sports fuel, I use Tailwind for calories and electrolytes. So I've got a big bag that I top up my bottles with when I'm at home or before a race, and then I use these little pouches that I take out with me to top up at aid stations if I'm racing. And then the gels that I use are Precision Hydration. And then from Precision Hydration, I also have salt tablets, which if it's a really hot day or if I'm in a high output environment, like going up steep mountains, I'll take extra salts just in case. The thing that I care most about with any sports nutrition is my gut. Obviously, I want it to be effective as a fuel, but I don't want to feel nauseous and sick. And I have never had any problems with Tailwind and Precision Hydration, so I'm sticking with these. So that's all the gear that has gradually become essential in my long distance running, but none of this matters if you don't have a good training plan. So I'll leave you here with the training plan that I used in my last ultra, and until next time, happy training.